The Inferno is the best part of Italian writer Dante Alighieri's 14th century poem, The Divine Comedy. The Inferno describes Dante's journey through hell, guided by the Roman poet Virgil. Hell is depicted as 9 circles of torment located within the earth. Dante describes it as realm of those who have rejected spiritual values by yielding to bestial appetites or violence, or by perverting their human intellect to fraud or malice against their fellow men. In this video, we will be analyzing and making a timeline of how Dante's work influenced how artists have portrayed hell for almost 600 years. We start at the very beginning. The Divine Comedy was originally written in 1314, but officially published on 1472. Dante lived in Florence during the Renaissance, at a time from 1400 and 1500 that was known for an explosion of creativity in the arts and sciences. So did painter Sandro Botticelli, who created 92 paintings based on the Inferno. The most famous is called The Map of Hell, in 1485. Aside from Botticelli's Birth of Venus, this is probably one of Botticelli's most famous works. Next in the timeline, a Flemish painter best known by his Italian name, Giovanni Stradanus, put his signature on the Inferno in 1578. As you can see, his style is very realistic with a lot of anatomical detail. One writer called these some of the most harrowing paintings of hell inspired by Dante's Inferno. 200 years later, the British painter William Blake in 1824 painted some of the most famous watercolor paintings of the Inferno. Blake supposedly created the 100 illustrations in a fever that lasted 2 weeks. As an artist, he's known for both writing and painting, which affected how he interpreted the Inferno, going so far as to learn Italian just to read it in the original. His paintings are famous for showing Dante always dressed in red and Virgil in blue. In 1857, Gustave-ay created probably the most famous Inferno illustrations that influenced how people visualize hell even today. In the 20th century, the Inferno inspired a lot of film directors, an influence that continues today, more than 600 years after Dante first wrote his poem. Starting it all off, in 1911, the Italian silent movie El Inferno was the first film adaptation as well as the first full-length Italian feature film. Some critics say it is still the best movie version even today. El Inferno has a really big production value that at times can look a little cheesy through our modern eyes, but El Inferno's critics at the time called it an otherworldly, compelling, immersive dive into hell. I wonder what would it look like in theaters today. As a black and white movie, it's very dark. In 1924, an American silent movie called Dante took creative license with the Inferno, with Dante as a greedy businessman named Mortimer Judd who dreams up the whole journey into hell and repents. This version is easily comprehensible, so it's a good introduction to all circles of hell. But to me, the Italian El Inferno does the better job as a direct adaptation. For a silent movie, El Inferno is considered a horror movie, while the American Dante is more of a moral fable, similar to Dickens' A Christmas Carol. In terms of set design, El Inferno definitely takes the cake. From the depictions of the horrors of hell, with excessive violence and gore, designed to frighten the audience into becoming spooked. I do have to give credit to the American Dante though, since their sets were obviously full budget with the large cast and lots of flames. But they really only showed 3 circles, unlike El Inferno, where we get to go all 9. Back to painting. In 1931, the surrealist painter Salvador Dali took on the Inferno. His art isn't as literal hellish as the other artists, since as a surrealist, Dali's images are more ephemeral. He was trying to visualize hell of the subconscious mind. He was successful in his attempts. Back to the movies. A 1935 film called Dante's Inferno was a loose adaptation, with only 10 minutes devoted to hell, but those 10 minutes are some of the closest to Dante's vision. Jumping 60 years, in 1990, A TV Dante was a miniseries that covers 8 of the 34 cantos in Dante's Inferno. It's really accurate to Dante's Inferno and actually follows the story as written. The 1998 movie, What Dreams May Come, was not a literal adaptation, but it certainly borrowed a lot from the Inferno. The story begins with Chris Nielsen, a modern stand-in for Dante, who is a pediatrician happily married to an artist, Annie Collins, a modern Beatrice, with 2 kids who die in a car crash. Sometime later, Chris is also killed in a car crash. Not really aware that he is dead, Chris lingers on Earth. Chris awakens in heaven that he has created with his imagination. Chris is accompanied in heaven by Albert Lewis, our modern Virgil. Then Annie, racked with guilt over the deaths of Chris and their children, commits suicide. Chris gets angry when he learns that those who die by suicide go to hell, and is not letting anything stop him from rescuing Annie from hell. It's his journey to hell where you see Dante's influence, such the boat named Cerberus over probably the river Styx. Some people find references to as many as 7 circles, but I think that's a stretch. The 2007 film Dante's Inferno brings in an entirely new angle to the story. with hand-drawn paper puppets on a toy theater stage. Somehow, they made it the story a comedy, even though most people don't find the Inferno part of the Divine Comedy particularly funny. In 2010, Dante's poem crossed into the digital age with the video game Dante's Inferno. In the game, players must help Dante travel through the circles of hell by battling demons, creatures, monsters, and even Lucifer himself to save Beatrice. Like a lot of people in my generation, I knew about this game long before I've ever heard of Dante and the Divine Comedy. And finally, the most recent film adaptation, 2013's Dante's Hell Animated. This film has two versions, one in English and the other in Dante's original Italian from the Renaissance period. A word on maps of hell. In 600 years, Dante's Inferno has inspired quite a few maps of hell. The first was Botticelli's Chart of Hell that shows a descent by Dante and Virgil through what one writer called the Abysmal Valley of Pain. The next one was Antonio Moretti, a mathematician and architect from Florence in 1529. There have been many Inferno maps over the centuries, but this one claims to be the most accurate. The Inferno's influence today. Back in 1989, the grunge band Nirvana put a map of the Inferno on the back of their first album called Bleach. It predictably inspired a lot of t-shirts. But this year, in 2021, Dante also inspired an intellectual property lawsuit from the granddaughter of the British artist who created that map of Dante's Inferno. So ironically, one could say Nirvana, which is another word for heaven, is in hell, or at least court, which Dante would probably add a circle of hell if he were writing today. Thank you for our journey through time. Hopefully for you it was not a trip through hell.